The overwhelmed brain is the source of self-empowerment for your personal evolution. Are you annoyed by affirmations?
I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
Are you even more annoyed by that one person who simply doesn't get it sometimes?
This is a stick-up. Everybody put your wallets in this bag.
Don't worry, everyone. Just think positively and we'll all be fine.
Hey, you, shut your mouth if you want to know what's good for you.
That's an understatement. I know what's good for all of us. Thinking positively. I know that this situation will play out in our favor because positive thinking is the miracle cure to all that is and ever will be.
Hey, take that loudmouth into the back room and shut him up permanently.
No problem, boss. You see? They're taking me out of the situation because I chose to think positively. If the rest of you were thinking positively, you'd be on your way to freedom too.
Shut up, let's go.
Ta-ta, folks. Learn from my example. There must be a back exit out of here somewhere. If affirmations feel like lies and positive thinking feels like denial, then get ready to start creating the life you've always wanted now. Hello, this is Paul Coliani, host of The Overwhelmed Brain, the personal growth show for the critical thinker. On every episode, we'll talk about practical, down-to-earth steps to help you improve your mood and keep you sane in this powerful journey we call life. I want to help you bridge the gap between your emotions and reason, causing you to discover why you do the things you do and what you can do to reach higher levels of happiness and lower levels of stress and overwhelm. And if you're here to learn more common sense tips for improving your life, well, let's just say that you're not going to get too much common sense here. This is the direct path to uncommon sense, and that's why it's going to help you learn, heal, grow, and evolve. Now, let me talk about something I haven't talked about in a while, which is an explanation of some of the things I say at the beginning of every episode. For example, one of the first things I say is, are you annoyed by affirmations? Now, I've talked about affirmations with some friends of mine. I've talked about affirmations on the air plenty of times, but I want to explain that I'm not against affirmations. And I just want to clear up what I mean by some of the things I say in every introduction. So, when I say, are you annoyed by affirmations? And if you are annoyed by affirmations, you already know what I mean. But if you're not, or if you're a first-time listener and you're trying to figure out what the show is all about, I want to tell you. For about 2 years, I got sucked into the world of affirmations, positive thinking, high vibrations, energy, law of attraction. I got sucked into that world. And I don't have anything against that, but let me just finish my story and you'll see where I'm going with this. And what happened to me was I ended up broke. I went bankrupt. I lost a condo in Florida in the bankruptcy. I got depressed. I ended up married and then ended up homeless and then ended up divorced, ended up losing my job. I mean, everything that you could think of, well, not everything, but a lot of things that really make us miserable, I ended up with. Now, I'm not blaming that on all this energy and law of attraction talk, but what it did when I got into that was take me out of some reality. And this reality was this place that I took a lot of action in life. And I always believed throughout my life that you work hard and you get money for working hard, and then you work even harder and you get overtime. I mean, it's not just about money and career, but you also work hard in your relationships and you work hard in life in general. You work hard in your belief systems and you work hard in your own personal growth and evolution. And you just try to figure things out as you go along, and you try to heal from the stuff as you go along. Well, some of us do. I tried to heal from a lot of the stuff that I had in my past, and some of the stuff I didn't even know that I needed to heal from. I just carried it around with me into every new relationship, into every new career, until until one of those was destroyed and I had to start over and carry that dysfunction or unhealed part of me into another new place in my life. So suddenly the law of attraction is really big, and everyone's talking about positive thinking. I know it's been around a while, but it really got mainstream in late 2000s. And I got into it too. I'm thinking, wow, does this stuff work? Wow. Do I look in the mirror and say these affirmations? Do I, whatever I think about, I bring about? Can I manifest stuff that I resonate with and I'm on the same frequency with? You know, all that talk. And I got into it. And I even ended up working for a personal growth guy that was in the movie The Secret. And I thought I was on top of the world. I thought, this is cool. Now everything is working out for me. So where am I going with this? Well, what I want to tell you is that after all the hardest stuff in my life hit, I went through a major change. I went through a major attitude adjustment. I became more cynical, somewhat critical, like critical thinking wise, not critical judgment wise. I'd always had that, but just critical in beliefs and what I'm going to believe next time, or what is my next belief going to consist of, because these beliefs took me down this road. Now I can look at this spiritually and say everything happened for a reason, which I do believe. But do I need to go down that road again? And was it necessary to learn that way? Yeah, probably. It probably was necessary to learn the way I learned and go through the hardships I went through. But does this stuff really work? Or does it have that missing component that all the personal growth gurus talk about? The action component. Everyone has it wrong. You have to take action. And then I was thinking, wait. So you think about it and you imagine yourself in the driver's seat of your new car. You can smell the leather, if that's your thing, and you could feel your hands on the steering wheel, and then you could just believe that it's true and that it exists. And then you go down to the car lot and you take a test drive and you just believe that this is your car. And then you go home and just wait for it to happen. Then for a few years, the personal growth gurus were coming out and saying, everyone's missing that one component of taking action on all that stuff. Meaning, don't only go down to the car lot and do a test drive. Go get a loan out of the bank. And then go to the car lot and pay them. And then you'll get the car. Then I was thinking, wait, how is that any different than what I was doing before all this stuff? I was taking action before. In fact, the whole law of attraction movement, if I may call it that, forced me off the action part of my life. And that's when everything took a downward spiral. For me, at least. And I look at that and go, I was already doing this stuff before I was told to do something else. So what I was doing was working. I owned my stuff. I wasn't renting. I had other things going on in my life. I had a good job that was stable. And everything was going pretty well. And then I started believing in stuff that didn't serve me. Now, you may or may not have heard me talk about beliefs that serve you and beliefs that don't. But all I do is say, hey, if you have a belief that serves you, keep going. Keep doing it. And if the belief doesn't serve you, then change it. It's your right. It's your mind. It's your body. It's your right to change beliefs that don't serve you. So if you have religious beliefs that make you feel guilty all the time, maybe you should study the part of your religion or some other religions that don't make you feel guilty, that make you feel good. Because whatever you feel good about, you're going to do more of. And whatever you feel guilty about, you're going to do it reluctantly or not at all. It's like, oh, I have to go to church every Sunday. If you feel that way, maybe you should study more or do something different. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying that there are alternatives to beliefs that you have, and you have every right to create beliefs that work for you. And this also works with spiritual beliefs, or if you're atheist, or any belief that you have. Whatever serves you, whatever makes you feel good when you adopt the philosophies behind the belief, that make up the belief, that make up a lifestyle that you want to live. Whatever serves you and propels you forward, gives you that forward momentum. So I had some forward momentum in the 2000s until this law of attraction stuff came out. And then I lost that momentum and hit several breakdowns, which led to several enlightening moments, several epiphanies, and my life is better in many ways because of it. So, was it a bad thing that I developed those new beliefs? In my opinion, it was not a bad thing. It was a good thing. It was a great thing because I'm a new person emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So I really have a lot to thank for those times of my life. But now, do I invite this stuff back in? Here's where the explanations begin. And I just wanted to give you that backstory to tell you where I'm coming from and what kind of motivated me to be a little bit more cynical about trends and beliefs that come out and how we all just kind of gravitate, or a lot of us just gravitate toward what seems to be working for some people. So I became annoyed with affirmations because when I say something to myself, like, I am a great person, and I don't feel it, it feels like I'm lying to myself. It feels like I'm resisting a truth in there that has more power than what I'm saying. And one of my big things is to eliminate resistance in our life and come to a place of acceptance. And it's funny, I just heard Eckhart Tolle say this morning on a video I watched, which is coming to a place of accepting the unacceptable. That's powerful. If you can come to a place of accepting what's unacceptable, and he gave the example of Stephen Hawking. If you don't know who that is, he's a brilliant, one of the most brilliant people on the planet, but he ended up with some condition where he has to spend his life in a wheelchair, barely able to move, and speaking through a computer. He just lost his motor functions, but he's brilliant. And Eckhart Tolle said, Stephen Hawking had to come to a place of accepting what was unacceptable, accepting that he wouldn't be able to move. And his life could have gone one of several ways, but probably one of two major ways, which is the first way of hating the condition that he was developing and moving into a place of suffering and denying and resisting and not wanting it, or accepting the condition he had and moving towards a place where he can use his brain, his mental faculties, his everything else that he can emphasize in some way or amplify in some way. Okay, my body's not going to work, so what else can I do? What else can I utilize inside this body? And he figured it out. I'm not saying he probably still not looking for a way to cure himself, and maybe he is. But he still accepted that that's what was happening to him, and that's what did happen to him. And now he's revered as one of the most brilliant men on the planet. So I really like the term accepting the unacceptable. And I may use that from time to time. Thank you, Eckhart. So the idea behind affirmations for me is when it doesn't feel right when you say it, when it feels like you're lying to yourself, then you're probably doing more harm than good. I am brilliant. I am wealthy. If you don't feel what you're saying through and through, and you feel this resistance build up inside of you, then either don't say that affirmation or change it. So if I said, I am wealthy and I have many options available to me, if I say that and it doesn't feel right, or I know it's not true, and I feel this resistance build up inside of me, then I might change it to, I am not wealthy yet, but damn it, I'm trying. And I'm going to keep trying until I'm exhausted. Now, when I say that, it feels amazingly better. It feels good. It gives me momentum. It propels me forward. I like it. Will I say that over and over again in a mirror? Probably not. I'm just not that type of person to look in a mirror and do that kind of thing, although I have done it. But when I think about the kind of wording that I want to use, it really helps change things. So that's my take on affirmations. If they feel like lies, then change the wording so it's truthful and helps you move toward the goal instead of just imagining that you're in the goal, but you're resisting it or something like that. You know what I mean? The next thing I talk about is positive thinking. Positive thinking is huge on this show, isn't it? I always tell you to think positively, and but in a joking way. I use it sarcastically in the beginning for the purpose of telling you that thinking positively does feel like denial sometimes. If you and I were in a coaching session and you told me something that was really upsetting you, and I just said, all right, what you need to do is close your eyes. Okay, good. I want you to imagine all the bad stuff that's happening in your life right now. You got it? Okay, good. Now, think positively about all that bad stuff. Just go ahead and do that. Think positively about that bad stuff. There you go. I know it's hard, but just go ahead and just change your thoughts. Just think positively. I'm exaggerating, of course, and people who use that term probably don't approach it like that. They probably have a systematic approach when they talk about how to get to positive thinking, which, again, I am not against. I appreciate positive thinking. In fact, one of the first people that I had on my show when I was doing interviews was Jeff Olson, who wrote The Slight Edge. And he ended up founding a magazine, I think, called Happiness or Be Happy, or it was based on positive psychology. And all of this stuff can and does work. Thinking positively can and does work when you're in the right space, when you're in the right frame of mind, and when you can define it in a way that works for you. This is that old what beliefs work for you kind of thing. So if you're in a bad state and someone says, think positively, it feels like someone's telling you to change the thoughts that you're having now and just turn off the bad thoughts or cover them with other thoughts. That's where I go with thinking positively. It feels like denial. It feels like you're denying what's really going on in your mind so that you don't have to think about that stuff. This can work. You can certainly cover the bad thoughts with good thoughts, but you will have to eventually get over those bad thoughts or process them or release them just to get through the day, the months, the years, your life in general. You do eventually have to get to a point where you resolve some of these bad emotions, or I shouldn't call them bad, but these bad feelings, these not so welcome feelings that we get, and these thoughts that come into our mind that make us feel bad. So thinking positively to me is like covering good thoughts over bad thoughts. And I don't think that's healthy. I do think it puts you in denial. And I've heard too many stories of, especially families, that went into denial with something that was going on in the family and chose to think positively. My mom, she did it for 40 plus years. She thought positively through her abusive marriage. And she suffered for over 40 years thinking positively, hoping that if she just kept thinking positively that he would eventually leave. And then when he wasn't around, she would think negatively. She would exclaim how much she hated being with him and how much she hated her life even. And so she was mixing positive thoughts with negative thoughts, and she always went into this denial state. And I say this out of total respect and love for my mom, because I've asked her if I could talk about her on the show, and she's like, absolutely. She goes, say anything you want about me on the show. I think it's great. And I'm like, okay. So that's why I talk about her a lot, because she gave me permission. And there's a lot to learn, and she knows there has been a lot to learn for her, and that others can learn from what she went through as well. So she did. She had this denial/positive thinking attitude for many, many years. I witnessed it firsthand, and it was certainly not helpful to her situation. What did she have to do? Well, the personal growth gurus would say, and I would agree, take action. Take action on what you want to change in your life, because just thinking about it doesn't change anything. It may start changing your thoughts and your perceptions and ideas about what to do next, but actually taking a forward step to give you forward momentum is the best way to go. But if you're only thinking positively to cover some of the negative stuff, then let's get you to a place where you're releasing that negative stuff first, or at least coming to terms with what you want to change in your life. I mean, that's what this show has been about for years. So find the episode that works for you and start releasing some of this stuff that you have built up and stop thinking positively over that stuff. Now, I will say you can think optimistically. I do think that's a healthier place to come from, is when you think about the good things that can happen or the way things might turn out. Instead of things turning out bad, they turn out good. It's not always the case, but even I can look at all the stuff that happened to me and how bad it was to go through and how good everything turned out. How good I feel having healed through a lot of that stuff that just came to a head in those late 2000s I talked about. And at the time, I wasn't thinking optimistically. I was thinking in the moment. I was thinking, how the hell am I going to get through this? And it did work out, just like I can look at my entire life and say, wow, I'm still here. I made it through that time. I made it through those moments. I made it through those years. I can look at my life and go, yes, here I am. And now I have wisdom from the bad experiences that I went through. Experiences turn into wisdom that you can share with others and live by as you go into future situations. But wisdom usually comes after the healing. And we usually don't have wisdom until there's some healing that has taken place, so that we come from a I guess, positive, optimistic viewpoint. It's hard to have wisdom about things if you're still suffering from the things that you're wise about. You can, but it's sort of like taking financial advice from someone driving a beat-up 1986 Camaro. There's nothing wrong with driving a 1986 beat-up Camaro, but somebody who's financially well off might not be driving an old beat-up car. Just my thought. But you know what I'm saying is, like, people that give you advice that really aren't living that advice in any way. So they don't have wisdom, they just have advice. They may have some experience even, but they still haven't gained that wisdom yet. They haven't gotten to that place where they can teach from that place. So you just have to weigh what they tell you and figure out if it works for you. It's that old adopting beliefs that work for you thing that I just talked about. Anyway, that's the affirmations and positive thinking aspects. Let's talk about the last thing about the intro that I want to talk about, which is bridging the gap between your emotions and reason. Coming up right after this. There's one more thing I want to explain that I say in the intro of every show, which is helping you bridge the gap between your emotions and reason. Now, this is pretty important, at least when I think about it, because there are people that are usually on one side or the other. They're either more emotional and less, I don't want to say reasonable, but logical, analytical. They're either in that camp, or they're on the other side where they're less emotional, more logical, more analytical, more reasonable, I guess, in some ways. And there's just this huge divergence in between. There's a big gap. And what you'll find with these people is that they are exaggerated in a way on one side or the other. For example, I've coached several couples where one person is more analytical and the other person is more emotional. And there's a giant gap in the way they communicate, in the way they try to connect, in the way they do everything together. There's just this void in the middle that they never meet in. It's like the old Star Trek series, that neutral zone, where all the alien species and races can fly through the neutral zone without getting into war. That's how it's supposed to be. It's like that neutral place where you feel safe, where there's not going to be any war. Let's have this neutral zone. And in relationships, we have this neutral zone, but we usually don't use it. And that's probably a bad example, so especially if you're not a sci-fi fan. But I just picture it that way. A couple having this giant gap in their communication because one is so analytical, typically the man, and one is so emotional, typically the woman, and at least in heterosexual relationships. But even whoever's more masculine and whoever's more feminine usually take on these roles, and it causes this communication gap. So I like to approach things both ways. I sound probably analytical to a lot of people, but I do teach and talk about a lot of emotional intelligence. And I do it from an emotional place. I mean, I do it from both. I like to think that I'm somewhere in the middle between the emotions and the logic so that I can connect with you from either side. So I can connect with you if you're an analytical person and if you're an emotional person. I'd like to think I do that. Does that mean I'm giving myself extra credit? No, I've just realized over the years that I've been on both ends of the spectrum. I've been the emotional person in a relationship, and I've also been the analytical person in the relationship. And neither one worked efficiently. So that's when I started practicing being both. How can I combine my emotions with my logic? How can I utilize everything about me and not just favor one thing over another? Again, there's nothing wrong with favoring as long as you're communicating. There's nothing wrong with being more emotional or more analytical. However you are is fine, as long as you can relate and connect and communicate with other people. And even if you can't, that's okay too, as long as you don't want to. So if you are okay not communicating well, which you probably aren't okay with that, but if you are, that's fine, then that's okay. I'm not telling you to change a thing. But the reason I'm telling you this is because that's what I say at the beginning of my show. I want to help you bridge the gap between your emotions and reason. And you may already be there. And you may just listen to this show for some advice every now and then, or just to hear my opinion on something, to see if what you're going through is what somebody else might be going through, and what advice am I giving them, or what insights am I giving them. Wherever you are is okay. And that's an underlying philosophy of my show, is that wherever you are is okay. It really is. Now, if you don't feel okay with that, that's not what I mean. I don't mean that if you're broke and homeless and sad, that's okay. What I mean is you accept what you don't want to accept. You accept that unacceptable thing about you. Because what you don't accept, you resist. And what you resist persists. We all know that term. And when it persists, it doesn't go away. So when you learn to accept what's not acceptable, when there's something going on in your life that you don't like, and you resist and resist and resist, then what you don't like will continue to be in your life. It's sort of like the thoughts of my past with my alcoholic stepfather, how they continued to invade my mind and continued to come back, and how the hatred and some of the old fears would boil up in me, and how they just stuck around because I didn't want them. And I wanted him to change. And that was my biggest resistance, is why won't he change? And that was my mom's resistance for 40 plus years. When is he going to change? And I finally accepted that he will never change. Never. And even if he does tomorrow, it doesn't matter, because really where I need to be is the acceptance that he won't. And if he does, great. Then I can have a new relationship with him from the new perspective as that new person he is. But if he doesn't change, then I'm okay with it. I don't like that he's suffering in his own way. I don't like the relationship that developed between us. And I've come to a place where I don't care if I have a relationship with him anymore. I know that sounds cold, but I don't. And I'm okay with that because I've accepted that too. But for the longest time, I wished he was different. And when you keep these wishes for something to be different without accepting them, they usually don't get different. They usually stay the same. So you choose to accept, and then suddenly your life gets a lot easier. I'm not saying that the situation changes, but something inside you changes where you're no longer suffering and in denial and in resistance, and you can move forward. Again, forward momentum. When you resist, you're out of momentum. You're in stagnation. You're trudging through 1.5 feet of mud, and each step is slow and tedious. And will you ever cross this emotional swamp if you keep going through it, not accepting that it's just the way it is? So coming to a place of accepting, even if you don't like it, but just accepting that it's not going to change, it really starts to lighten the load that you put on yourself. It lightens the bad feelings a bit. You still may not like it, and you still want a resolution, but you've accepted that certain people or situations in your life will never change. And some people can't do that. Some people don't want to accept that. I hope that's not you. But if you can accept that this will never change, then you will learn to take action. You will learn to have an experience that you may not want to have, but it will be forward momentum. And you will become wise and bring that wisdom with you into the future, and quite frankly, just be happier. You will be happier if you choose to let go of the resistance, and you'll find that you won't be in one of the states that I just talked about. You won't have to use affirmations. You won't have to use positive thinking. You won't have to figure out how to get from an emotional place to a logical place, or a logical place to an emotional place, because those things start fulfilling themselves when you start honoring yourself, when you start moving forward and taking steps to make your life better, even if they're hard steps. These things fulfill themselves, and suddenly affirmations come out of your mouth automatically, and you will start saying things like, wow, life is pretty damn great. And if it's hard for you to resonate with now, then maybe it's time to look at what you're resisting and what you're not accepting, and just get to a better place inside you with that stuff. Again, it doesn't mean that once you accept it that you don't do anything about it. If you have a condition that you don't want to accept, but you choose to accept anyway, then you still look for the cure. You still look for solutions, but you stop resisting it. You stop denying it. If you're in a relationship where you hope the other person will change, then you accept that they will never change. And that's hard to accept, but once you do, then your thoughts are clear. Then you can start taking steps towards what will make you happier. And whether that means staying in the relationship or not, it's up to you. But at least you'll be free of the burden of having thoughts that are persistent. Resistance of what is persists what is. I want you to move past the resistance in your life and get beyond that so that you can create the life you want. That's where I wanted to take you with this first segment. Just kind of explain why I do what I do, and give you sort of an explanation of why I say what I say at the beginning of each episode, and perhaps why I make a joke out of positive thinking. Again, I believe in all of it, and it can work. You just have to be in the right space. It's sort of like seeing that book on the shelf that someone told you to get, looking at it and going, that's not for me. But then 10 years later, seeing that same book going, wow, this is perfect timing. This is exactly what I need. You just have to be in the right space to accept it at the time you need it most. So there's that. Let's get to our Ask Paul segment coming up next. All right, I want to talk about something that you probably think you don't need. And that's something that I like to call legal insurance. It's sort of like when you get into a car accident and you go, oh, thank God I have insurance so that it pays for their damages just in case that happens. And that does happen. Except car insurance is usually expensive or more expensive than what I'm talking about today, which is legal insurance. GetOutOfTheMess.com connects you straight with this legal insurance, or better known as Legal Shield, and gives you peace of mind so that you don't have to worry when something out of the ordinary happens and now you need an attorney, or you need to just ask them a question to figure out how to get out of the mess and move beyond what's happening in the moment. And one of the things that happened to me a few years ago, back in 2007 or 8, is that I started renting out the condo that I owned to someone else. I lived in Florida at the time, but I moved to California, and I wanted to rent that condo out and see if I can make some extra income while paying off the mortgage. Well, everything was great for about 6 months. And all that time I was working with a property manager down there, and they were just really, really nice. However, they failed to tell me several things, and the person they rented to destroyed the place. And she also stopped paying rent. So several months in, when she stopped paying rent, and I didn't find out until later that she destroyed it, but she started slowly destroying everything that I updated. I mean, brand new carpet, brand new paint, brand new kitchen. I put all this stuff in, and she destroyed it. And I was talking to the property managers. They were completely steering me in the wrong direction. And they would say things like, oh, just give her another month to pay. She's so nice. And I fell for it. I mean, I do believe in, having sympathy for people. And I did give her a month or two here and there. But it got to the point where it was just getting worse and worse. And then I found out the cops were called there, and there was a broken window. And there were more stories that came out of that. But over and over again, the property managers were just like, oh, she's just a nice person. Let's see if we can do this for her and do that for her. They have every right to say that, but at the same time, should they not be more concerned for their direct client, me? Should they not be concerned for what is happening to me and how I'm losing money and all that stuff was going on? They were trying to convince me to let her stay. And by doing that, I found out that she destroyed the place and she stopped paying, and I eventually had to get her evicted. But that whole time, I just felt like I was being bamboozled by the property manager, and they were more concerned about keeping her happy than me. That's a problem. I understand you want to keep your renter happy too, but when you're the landlord and things are going down the hole, you want to know that someone is there to fight for you, to make things right, so that you don't have to be there to hold their hand the whole way. And back then, I barely knew how to honor my personal boundaries, and I barely was able to stand up for myself. So I was so happy to find a property manager that would manage my property. The problem is they didn't manage my property. They let it go downhill. And I found out that she destroyed the place, and she smoked in the place, and she left garbage in the place. She didn't even have a litter box for the cat. And after she was evicted, my realtor, it's like 3 days later, found the cat in the unit. So the cat was abandoned and locked in the house. Thank God she went over there and found the cat and took care of him so he didn't die in there. So why I'm telling you all this is that at the time, I really felt like I had no one to call. And the only person I did call, the property manager, I just felt like they were steering me in the wrong direction. But the thoughts in the back of my mind at the time were like, well, they're property managers. They must know what they're doing. And so I think, geez, if I only had someone to call, if I only had an attorney that I could bounce a question off of and say, is this right? They're doing this, and the tenant is doing that, and they're allowing it to happen. What do I do? I just felt helpless. And I wish I had some sort of legal advice at that time. And that's the type of service that Asha with GetOutOfTheMess.com connects you with. If I had that legal insurance at the time, I would have definitely called them. I felt like I was backed in a corner and I didn't know what to do. And I eventually lost. That's one of the major things that led up to my bankruptcy, because the tenant stopped paying and I felt like I had no recourse whatsoever. But for $20 a month, I could have had this service. It was actually less back then, but I could have had this service, and I didn't. So now I do, and anything can come my way, and I'm prepared for it. I'm very happy to feel prepared for any type of situation that comes up for me. Very happy, very peaceful to know that someone is on my side. So I want that for you too. I want that feeling of less stress and more peace and just having someone on your side so that you don't feel coerced or bullied. I want you there too. Call Asha at 678-355-8777 or go to getoutofthemess.com. All right, let's get to our Ask Paul segment. This is where I read a listener email on the air and do my best to answer their question. This email is from someone I will call Bill. Good evening, Paul. My name is Bill, and I was wondering if you could create a show on how to be more assertive and less passive. I've always been told that I had a kind heart and that I can truly empathize with people. I didn't realize I was that way until I noticed that whenever I would get into a situation where someone wanted to argue with me, I would instantly shut down and not respond. Or I would say whatever just to end the argument, only to feel angry and bitter. And that wasn't temporary. I don't believe I was born passive, but I know that maybe I went through some events that maybe when I was a baby caused me to become passive. I'm not sure. Anyway, I love your podcast, and it has really done wonders for me, and it really opened my mind to the possibilities at looking at situations from every angel. I read that on purpose, the way he spelled it, because it's kind of a neat way to write it, because some people believe that angels are watching you. So I just thought it was cute how he misspelled that. So Bill, thank you for writing that, and I can totally relate. This is exactly who I was for many, many years. I was definitely not assertive and definitely more passive to the point where people just walked on me. And that's where it sounds like you're at. People just walk on you. And then you get angry. And the reason you get angry is because you leave an argument or a situation where you feel like you didn't honor your boundaries. You've had something come up, a thought or a feeling or an idea or a concept or whatever, and you didn't speak it. You didn't express it. And you walked away, and they pretty much, for lack of a better term, won. They won. They had power over you. And it doesn't feel good when someone does that. But how does that happen? It happens just as you describe. You're passive. Now, basically what you're saying with that is that I don't want to speak up and honor myself in the moment. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. If you're that passive, because I consider myself still passive. I'm very passive. I don't let things get to me. So there's a difference between passive and letting people walk on you and violate your personal boundaries. So I would say that you're probably very passive, which is a good thing, but you're not honoring your personal boundaries, which is a damaging thing. It can be very destructive, because what that will do is create all kinds of havoc and dysfunction in your life. But how do you go about honoring yourself, stepping into this new way of being easily? Well, it's not easy, because the very first thing that comes to mind is if I say what I want to say in this moment, someone will be upset with me. So I will be in trouble, maybe. I will get fired. Someone will leave me. I mean, all these thoughts come to our mind when we're faced with a situation where we have an opportunity to honor ourselves or honor them over ourselves. Now, let me repeat that, because that's probably a vital component of this whole process, is that when you choose to not honor yourself in the moment, to express what is going on in your mind, to express what you want for you, you are instead honoring other people over you. And what that does is that when they do not have your best interest in mind, you are honoring their lack of best interest in you, if that makes sense. You are honoring what they want for themselves. So not only are they honoring what they want for themselves and stepping over you to do it, but you're honoring them doing it. Now, there's something backwards about that. There's something really odd when you are honoring people that walk on you, when you are honoring their behavior or supporting their behavior when they walk on you. And, the hard part is you don't see it in the moment all the time. You may not see it when it's happening because, okay, you have a situation where, hey, there's an opportunity to express myself and say what's on my mind. Do I take this opportunity? Do I do it? Or will they be mad at me? Will they be upset with me? Will they do something to me that causes me pain or grief or fear or something in some way? Our minds go to the consequence instead of the moment of our truth. I mean, think about that. When those moments come, you feel it. You feel it's your moment of truth. That's a great way to put it. This is the moment of my truth. Am I going to step into it, or am I going to back away and honor them not honoring me? Ouch. That's not good. That's like the time when my stepfather showed up at the door after he'd been gone a year. I was at my mom's house, and he asked to see my mom. And the little child in me kicked in and immediately got into fear mode because this is a man I feared all my life. But now I'm an adult. I was 44 at the time. This is only a couple years ago. I'm standing there in front of him. He's at the front door of my mom's house. And I have this opportunity to be the child I always was or be the man that I turned into. And I tell you what, in milliseconds, I had to come to a place of, am I going to be what I teach? Am I going to be this adult, this person who does honor his personal boundaries, no matter who it is, no matter what the situation, because it's the right thing to do for me? And that question came up in my mind. Am I going to honor the person who doesn't have, in this situation, my mom's best interest in mind? Am I going to honor that person, which is basically dishonoring my mom? Oh, that's a good one. Am I going to dishonor my mom in this moment? Or am I going to stand up and be the man and take the consequences no matter what they are? And I can still feel these feelings that came up in me of these conflicts of like, if I'm the child in this moment, then he's going to walk right in. And who knows what's going to happen? I mean, I don't think he was going to beat her up or anything because he was being that desperate, take me back kind of person at the time. But I didn't want him in the house because he was so damaging for so long. And the adult in me, the man in me, rose up and said, I'm sorry, she doesn't want to see you. And it took a lot to muster that statement. It took a huge leap because I'd been in that child's belief system for so long. Yes, I'd healed from all the hatred that I had, and I was able to love him from a whole new place and then leave him and dismiss him from my life. And here was the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, testing me in the moment to figure out if I was really at that place. I mean, it may not have been a test. It might have been a coincidence, but I'd prefer it to be a test. I want to be tested. I want to know where I am with this stuff so that I can be congruent when I come on the air and talk about it. And that was a moment of my truth. And this is what I want you to do, is be in that moment of your truth, no matter what. Because what you're doing is you're bringing childhood beliefs. You're acting, I'm going to be blunt here, you're acting like a little boy. You're acting like a child that's going to get spanked or yelled at. And when you're an adult, you don't have to think that way anymore. Yes, there are situations that can be abusive or violent, and you have to pick and choose your battles, but you don't have to be that way anymore. because you're an adult. You're old enough. You're beyond that point where you have to listen to your parents or do what your parents say. I mean, they may still have some good advice. I'm not saying that, but but you don't have to be the child, the scared child that you used to be. That's why you called yourself passive. That's why you're not assertive. I mean, you know this. You know you brought all this behavior from childhood and you're bringing it into adult situations, into your relationships, into your career, into life in general, and you're still acting like a child. I say that with all respect and love for you. You're acting from a child's perspective. So, what you need to do, step one, is remember that you're an adult now, that you have taken huge steps in your life to be where you are. And you have it in you. Even if you don't think you do, you have it in you somewhere to be assertive, to be confident. Because think of something that you've done in your life where you were confident. Think of anything that where you were assertive. I want you to think about that first, because knowing that it's in you means that you have that resource available and you can access it anytime you want. So know that it's in there. Now, if you can't think of a time when you were assertive or confident or you stood up for yourself, then do the personal boundaries exercise that I talked about in a few episodes, where you're outside about 20 feet away from a street, and next to the street on the sidewalk is a little boy. And you see this little boy and you realize it's you. So you're looking at this little boy going, wow, there's me as a little boy. Whatever wonder comes to your mind, just be with it for a moment and go, whoa, where am I? I went back in time. Or that little boy came forward in time. Or we're just meeting each other in our mind. Whatever the case. But just imagine that's you, that little boy about 20 feet away from you. It's a good distance. So he doesn't know you're there. So he's standing on the sidewalk and this vehicle pulls up next to him. Maybe a white van. And the side door opens. And you're going, what is going on? And you see these somewhat shady characters in the van motioning for that child to come into the van. Now remember, this is you. What would you do if you saw this situation? You can tell that this little boy does not recognize anyone in the van, because you don't recognize anyone in the van. So what do? Do you honor yourself, that little boy, and protect him? Do you run over there? I mean, that's what I would do. I would run over there and get in between them and the child and say, can I help you? Or just take myself away from that dangerous situation and protect him. This is a personal boundaries exercise you can do in your mind. I want this to appear every time you have an opportunity to say something that you are thinking about not saying. I mean, not every time, but in a lot of ways, when you really feel like you want to honor yourself at the moment, but you're afraid to, remember who you're dishonoring. I hate to put it that way, but if it's more blunt, it's more effective. Remember who you're dishonoring when you're in that situation and you choose not to honor yourself. That little boy, that little child inside you needs the adult protector, needs you to step in, because he needs to know that you are there for him. I know this sounds a little out there, but if you do this, I promise you, your life is going to change. Your life is going to change for the better in many ways. It's going to be hard for some people to accept you honoring yourself. That's for sure, because some people don't want you to honor yourself. They want you to honor them honoring themselves. But they don't want to honor you honoring yourself. Now, that's not very good. That's not very fair. That's not the way this works. Love and support from people is a two-way street. You can honor them honoring themselves as long as they honor you honoring yourself. So think of a situation where you could have stood up for yourself and you could have said something different or done something different, and how it would be different if you as a child was right there about to land in a very dangerous situation. That's a good exercise to do, and it's a great image to pop up in your mind when you're about to not honor yourself, when you're about to dishonor a part of you that really needs your protection, your love, your support. This is important. This is important for you because if you can do this in little ways, a piece here and a piece there, that part of you is going to start trusting you more and more. And when I say that part of you, it's just the memories and the feelings and the emotions that we brought with us from childhood. Those are still running the show sometimes. And sometimes they run the show because they have no one else to turn to. There's not the adult that steps in and says, I got this. I will take care of you. So when you make that adult step in and do that, then the child in you can play a bit more safer. The child feels safe around you. Really, I mean, if you're going to look at this analytically, then really all you're doing is making up for the times that you were put in a situation as a child, maybe with your parents or some other adult role model that didn't teach you how to stand up for yourself and probably put you down when you did. Or you learned not to be assertive because when you were, you got spanked or you had the fear of God put in you or whatever. Whatever your situation was as a child doesn't apply anymore. And the hard step is to honor your own truth. It's the moment of your own truth that comes up that you really have to get beyond. And it's okay to start doing that in tiny, tiny baby steps. And what I mean by that, and another example I use, is someone wants to go to a movie and it's a movie you don't want to see. Do you give in and go, okay, I'll go see it? Or do you go, no, I don't want to see that. I want to go see something else. You're welcome to come with me. I mean, that's, you don't have to say it that way because when you're with friends, maybe the movie doesn't matter. But I'm just saying when this feeling comes up and you have an opportunity to honor yourself, honor that child inside of you, take the opportunity, because if you don't, it is dangerous. It is damaging. It's like exposing your child, the person inside of you, those feelings, those emotions, those vulnerabilities. It's like exposing those vulnerabilities in you to danger. Because what happens is the less you honor yourself, the more you honor others dishonoring you. So that's angle A. I'm talking about angles and angels. That's angle A. And the other angle is the more you honor yourself, the more you get into alignment with what you really want in life. And part B of that is that you find out who really supports and loves you and wants you to be happy and wants to respect you and wants to see you succeed in life. You find out who your friends are, and you find out who wants you to grow and heal and evolve, and also who wants you to stay the same so that they can stay the same. And that's so revealing when you start honoring yourself and you find out that others don't want you to honor yourself so that they can stay the same in their dysfunction. Because if you evolve in your dysfunction and heal, then they can't utilize you to continue being dysfunctional around you. And that's going to be hard for people. That was hard for some members of my family. I have family members that I couldn't meet their needs. I couldn't meet them at their dysfunction, and I didn't want to. And it was very hard to say no or to stand up for myself because I knew that would mean that they would be hurt. I knew that would mean they probably wouldn't like me or even hate me. But then I asked myself, wait, if they love me, they'll want me to be happy. If they want me to be happy, then they'll be okay with me going, no, I don't want to do that. They'll understand. But if they don't really love me, or at least in the way that I deserve to be loved, then they're going to have more selfish thoughts. Like, well, if you're not going to do that for me, I guess I have no use for you. And do I want those kind of people in my life? My answer is no. And my answer will continue to be no. And sometimes I'll be lenient. I'll have a friend or a family member do something that I may not agree with, and I have to come to that, my own truth, and ask myself, okay, is this right for me? It's a great question. Is this right for me? And I might say, no, that doesn't feel right. That's not right. But I'll give them some leverage. I'll let them get away with this little thing. I won't give them any grief for it. And I just let it happen. As long as I'm continuing to honor myself in other ways, I'll just let these little things happen. That's fine. It's not like we just become staunch, our own martial law, and nothing can get through this impenetrable wall. We just, like I said, pick and choose our battles, but for the most part, be honorable to ourselves. So I hope this helps, Bill. I've talked about this quite a few times on the show, about personal boundaries and such, but sometimes I say it a little differently every time, so I like to repeat what I'm saying, and maybe this will resonate with you. And also, I highly recommend, if you want to learn assertiveness, get a dog. I say that because I also like to promote Cesar Millan's work. Cesar Millan, also known as the Dog Whisperer, has really, really great way with animals, with dogs. And when you watch him work, he doesn't apply discipline. And when he trains dogs, and when he, what he calls rehabilitates dogs, he does it with a calm, assertive energy. Even when they're biting him, he will even let them bite him. And he just comes at them with a calm, assertive energy continually until they see that he is someone they can respect and look up to. That's where you can be. You can be someone that people can respect and look up to. Because when you are not someone that people respect and look up to, guess what? They're probably looking down at you. I know that's probably harsh and exaggerated, but think about it. If you are letting people walk on you, do you think they're looking up to you? Do you think that they're going, oh, he's so kind and compassionate, I look up to that person? I mean, they might. But I don't want to be known as that kind, compassionate person that anyone can take advantage of. People don't look up to people like that. They aspire to be certain characteristics of that, but certainly not someone who it gets walked on. When you start reading or looking into the videos of Cesar Millan, you'll see how he teaches that as a dog owner. When you're a dog owner and you want to make sure your dog is not this, what he calls neurotic dog, that a lot of, unfortunately, American dog owners precipitate in their dogs, because the dog looks for the calm, assertive pack leader. When the dog doesn't find that pack leader, it thinks it has to lead not only himself, but also the family, and be the playful one, and be the protector, and take on all these roles that make him neurotic. And I thought, wow, what a great perspective with people, too. Some of the best leaders in our lifetime are the ones that are calm and assertive. That means you're not overreacting and you take action. It's a great coupling of characteristics for anyone to have in any situation, not just leadership situations, in every situation. It's hard to do because we get triggered, of course, but look him up if you have a moment, and maybe you'll start understanding from what angle he's coming from, and it'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So, again, I hope that helps, Bill. Thank you so much for writing, and good luck. Send me an update when you start doing this little by little, or any big steps that you want to take. Even better. We'll be right back. I want to tell you about the TOB Patron Program. If you haven't looked on the website, theoverwhelmedbrain.com/member, you're missing a bigger part of the Overwhelmed Brain. And what I mean is that there's more to this show than meets the eye or ear. And more can be found in the TOB Patron Program. Now, the TOB Patron Program is a place where you can get private episodes of The Overwhelmed Brain, including stuff that I don't talk about on the air. I'm going to get into some deeper material, and I haven't fully fleshed this out yet, but maybe even some adult-oriented stuff. Stuff that maybe will affect your romantic life or your sex life. Stuff that maybe you could use an extra boost in your life that just gets a little deeper into some of the areas that I don't discuss on this show. So I really want you to go over to theoverwhelmedbrain.com/member and join one of the levels. I mean, it starts at $3 a month. Very, very affordable. And you get those private episodes, and it goes all the way up to like $29, where you'll get group coaching and worksheets that you won't find on the website, and even a private email directly to me where I answer it within 2 days instead of 2 months. Like I did with Bill in this last segment. It's been 2 months since I got that email. I get a lot of them, so I have to find a way to prioritize them, and that's one of the ways I do it. So I'd really like to see you over there. There's a members-only website where you can access the episodes and worksheets and all kinds of things going on over there, so I'd love to see you. theoverwhelmedbrain.com/member. All right, we have time for one more quick email, and it's a complex topic, but I'm going to make it quick because a lot of what I talked about already really addresses what this other gentleman wrote. So I won't dive too much into it, but I did want to comment on this. Here it is. Hi, Paul. I really want to say thank you for the show. My brother introduced it to me a few months ago, and I can't overstate how much you've helped me. As an adult child of an alcoholic, I find many of the topics you address so very relevant. In the past year, I went from a long relationship in which I played the role of caretaker to then realizing that I might be, or rather have been, repeating the same behavior with someone else, which was around when I discovered your show. It's been a guidepost of sorts, helping me to be mindful of self-care, taking it one step at a time. I was wondering if you would consider the loss of childhood that occurs when raised in a dysfunctional home, along with the kind of inflexible mentality that accompanies it. I've often read about ACOAs, adult children of alcoholics, struggling to allow themselves to have fun or just simply play, along with never having learned those abstract, non-linear thinking skills. Thank you so much for all your help. All right, I'm going to call you Steve. Thank you so much for writing, Steve. And this is another email that I can definitely relate to because I grew up as an adult child of an alcoholic. I rarely say those words on the air, but it's true. I am an adult child of an alcoholic. It sounds like I have this label or condition. I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. It has been a struggle for a long time because of all these symptoms that appear being an adult child of an alcoholic. For example, perfectionism, highly responsible, highly judgmental of others. Some of us do this, not all of us. It's one of the characteristics of an ACOA. Let's see, what else? Very passive-aggressive. Not honoring themselves, not honoring their personal boundaries. Basically everything I've ever talked about on this show. All the symptoms that I've had throughout my life and all the things I've talked about, for the most part, are a lot of the symptoms that a lot of ACOA people have. So can I relate? Absolutely. And can I relate to a loss of childhood? Well, yes and no. I remember because my mom really buffered a lot of the stuff that we had to go through. I mean, there was still some nasty stuff that I dealt with myself, but I did not live in a highly repressed household. I lived in a highly volatile household. I grew up scared and walking on eggshells, especially when I knew that anything could incite that drunk dad behavior that I was scared of. But for the most part, I was free to do a lot. Even as a child, I would walk for miles. I remember this. When I lived in Massachusetts, I walked for miles and miles before I was around 10, I guess, to the bowling alley to play video games. I was free to do whatever I wanted. So I was I was able to do what I wanted and be free to be a kid when I was outside the house. And even when I was home, just living in fear didn't stop me from being a kid and playing the rest of the time. And I think it's because of my mom's influence. She was able to have a positive attitude no matter what. She was optimistic no matter what. And that rubbed off on me and most of us kids. It didn't help some of us kids, but it definitely rubbed off on me, and I got a positive attitude even through the muck and mire, even through the abuse and other things. So it's odd because when you're a child, I was 1 when my stepfather moved in, and that's all I knew. That's the only environment I knew, was that there was a violent alcoholic person in the house, but that was normal to me. So my childhood wasn't necessarily stripped away, but this can and does happen to many people, and especially when there's further physical or sexual abuse involved. Their childhood, their innocence is stripped away. Their naivety is stripped away. Their curiosity is stripped away and replaced with survival mechanisms, replaced with things that you have to do to survive. They're replaced with things that aren't very conducive to playing and being a kid and feeling the innocence and freedom of being a child. So I can definitely understand. I definitely know this happens. And in a small way, I experienced that. But I was still able to play and enjoy childhood. But the other dysfunctions in me were amplified over my lifetime, and I had to deal with those. So even though it's not the same struggle, it's the same root. The issues came from the same root problem or challenge, however you want to look at it. So your question about how can an ACA have fun or just play? And I think that's a valid question. And my question to you is, what would happen if you did? And this may be something that we need to talk about one-on-one. What would happen if you did play? Do you want to play? Is that something that you want to do? My assumption is yes, you do, because you wouldn't have asked otherwise. You would have asked, well, how does one get to a playful state? Because if you didn't care, you wouldn't ask. So that's my assumption. I might be wrong, but I'm assuming that you do want to play. Why wouldn't you want to play? Because playing is fun. Playing is enjoyment. Playing is laughing and smiling. At least that's what it usually is. But when you don't have that chance as a kid, then what do? What would you do if you were a kid today? What would you do to play? Since I don't know your answer of why you don't play, or what stops you from playing, then it's kind of hard to direct you over the air like this. But what would you do if you were a kid right now and you wanted to play? Would you get out your Matchbox cars? Would you play with army men? Would you play with dolls? Whatever you wanted to play with. Would you play with a teddy bear? Would you ride your bike? Would you play frisbee? Would you play kickball? I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can do to play. And some of these things you can find in meetup groups and where adults just get together and play. Now, playing as an adult is a lot different than playing as a kid, but it's still connecting with that part of us that we think is lost. So what is playing anyway? Playing is a freedom and a feeling. Playing is not worrying about things, it's just enjoying yourself. Playing is sort of an escape sometimes. It's like seeing a movie is kind of an escape. It's kind of like playing. You're playing make-believe. So maybe the advice I can give you, if I have advice in this area, is to consider what you do now to enjoy yourself and amplify that. Or do things that you didn't do as a kid that you can do now. When I was in my 30s, I bought a pinball machine for my house. I was like, this is something that I really enjoyed as a kid, and now I have it in my house. I wanted to play. I wanted to feel that freedom I did as a kid. It's that Sometimes it's that nostalgic feeling of wanting what once was or wanting what never was. Because sometimes we get caught up in work and all the stressors of life that really bring us down. And we just want a freedom from that, an escape from that. So what do? You find other things to do. And maybe this is one reason people have kids. Because when their kids grow up to a certain point, they play, which forces the child in us to play too. I don't know, but I do know that whatever's stopping you from feeling this playful way needs to be addressed in some way. And how do you do that? My answer is listen to the last segment where I answered that listener's email on honoring yourself and honoring your boundaries. Because it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to get anywhere in life unless you are purposefully creating that life by honoring yourself and what you want. And, as an ACOA, adult child of an alcoholic, we usually didn't ask for what we wanted. We just took what we got. And sometimes that included pain. But now you can ask for what you want or do what you want within reason. But when you have this new belief system that you are an adult now and you can make decisions that are good for you, that will make you happier, like getting a pinball machine when you're an adult. I was like, wait, I'm an adult now. I can just buy a pinball machine. And I did. And I enjoyed it the time I had it. And then eventually I sold it and got my money back. So it all worked out. But I was able to explore some of the loss from my childhood. Again, it wasn't the huge loss that some of us experience, because I know there's some people out there that their entire childhood was ripped out from under them. And they just turned into a survival machine to get through the bad times. And then they took these survival mechanisms into their adult world, and now they're still using them, and they aren't so needed anymore for the most part. They have value and they have benefit. But what's one thing you can do today to play, to let yourself live a little bit freely, to escape some of the pressures of life? What's one thing you can do today? As you grow up, your wants and needs change. But I remember myself as a kid sitting on one of those big wheels. You remember those big wheels, those plastic, pedal-driven, three-wheeled, I don't know what they called, little cart, bike, scooter thingy. And I would go as fast as I can and just slide sideways and do a power slide around corners or whatever. I just remember I had a blast. I can see myself on an adult version of that doing it today. It sounds silly, it sounds immature, but it would probably be very fun. And I've noticed that they've actually built those things for adults now. Now, am I going to do it? Probably not. I'm more of an inline skater type of guy, so. But I could, if somebody put one of those things in front of me, I would probably use it, and I would probably enjoy it. So one of the ways to get to that childhood again is to start honoring yourself and doing what you want. Because as an ACOA, you get so used to listening to others and having other people dictate what you need to do in your life. And we need to step out of that. And the only way to do that is to start honoring yourself and doing it in small ways so that you can do more of what you want. Because that's what really being a kid, or at least most of it, is about, is experiencing all the new stuff that you've never experienced before and doing whatever you want. You don't have a job, you don't have responsibilities, you just go out and do whatever you want. You might get disciplined for doing some of the stuff you want, but that's the idea, is just to go out there and push limits, figure out what's fun and what's not, and just do more of what you're doing today. But the way to get there is to start realizing that you do need to stand up for what you want to do in life more and more, so that play comes easier. Because play doesn't come easy when you're so worried about all the pressures in life. And we worry about pressure and stress sometimes because we're not doing what we really want to do in life. Again, this is a complex topic, and I would we would be better off talking one-on-one. So certainly reach out if you want to coach on this, or listen to some other episodes about honoring yourself, honoring your personal boundaries. And also, one other thing, getting into alignment with what you value most. You can download the Stop Self-Sabotage worksheet, which helps you get into alignment with what's most important to you. Just go to theoverwhelmedbrain.com and click on Deeper Learning, and you'll find that worksheet there. It's called Stop Self-Sabotage, and that gives you an idea of what direction you're going in now and why things aren't working out as you want them to work out. I know it doesn't sound like it's going to open up your play center inside your body or whatever, but knowing your direction is like seeing a lighthouse at the shore and steering your ship in that direction. And discovering that through that worksheet is a great way to do that, because once you know your direction, then you feel more purposeful. You feel more meaning in life. And playing comes easier because now you're purpose-driven. You're motivated for different reasons. Sure, you may not be able to get the same enjoyment as you did as a kid, but even play matures. Even the way we play in the world today has to evolve in ways that accommodate our growth and our maturity levels and our brain capacity, things like that. It reminds me, like a few months ago, I did laser tag for the very first time. It was tiring. I kept losing, but it was a new experience, and new experiences are definitely a positive way to expand what's possible inside of you and figure out what really works for you. And it'll also help you with those non-linear thinking skills. That's something you mentioned in your email. Along with never having learned those abstract non-linear thinking skills. Yeah, that comes from not taking control of our life because we're afraid to, or not honoring ourselves because other people are making decisions for us. And if we don't do what they say, then we feel like we're going to get in trouble. We feel like we're going to get hurt. All the same stuff that I talked about in the last segment. But when we start doing new things and having new experiences, then our brain starts to work in more linear ways because we're creating new, synaptic connections and new neural pathways that are more linear instead of scattered like they can get when we're on survival mode. I mean, survival mode is a very focused way to be, and you'd think it's linear, but really it's fight or flight. It's, where do I run? Give me an exit. And it's just scattered. There's no plan. You just run or fight. So when you start having these new experiences, you start creating more linear thought processes because you start understanding yourself better and you start creating the life you want instead of the one that's handed to you. Because if you choose to stay in a place where life is handed to you and people are not honoring you and you're letting them walk all over you, and of course your thinking's not going to be very linear, and you might even stay in victim mode. And when you're in victim mode, you just blame the world for all your problems and just wait for the world to do something different so you'll be happier. And that's going to lead to very non-linear thinking because you're not taking action on anything you're doing. So that's what I'm going to leave you with today. I hope that helps you, and thank you so much for writing. I appreciate you, and I wish you the best with that. Definitely listen to more shows because as an adult child of an alcoholic, I talk about a lot of those symptoms on many episodes, and you'll find that they are probably very helpful. Thank you again. And that's it for today's episode. I'm so glad you tuned in to listen. We'll talk soon. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Overwhelmed Brain. I want to thank GetOutOfTheMess.com. If you want that peace of mind, knowing that you can just call an attorney to ask almost any question, anytime, for just $20 a month, contact Asha with Get Out of the Mess. She will connect you with the freedom to be comfortable no matter what life sends your way. If you're in the U.S. or Canada, visit GetOutOfTheMess.com or call 678-355 8777 and talk with Asha today. She'll let you know if this service is right for you. And are you in the TOB Patron Program yet? If not, then you're probably missing some of the best stuff. Private episodes, worksheets that you won't find anywhere else, and group coaching where you can ask questions or simply listen and learn. Visit theoverwhelmedbrain.com/member and become a TOB patron today. The private episodes are only $3 a month, but I promise to deliver value 10 times that amount. So join today. Go to theoverwhelmedbrain.com/member. And whether you're a patron or not, I want to thank you if you've purchased one of my books, worksheets, or even used the Amazon link on the website. The Amazon link is the easiest way to give back. So if you've been listening for months or even years, use that Amazon link every time you shop. Your shopping habits are making a difference. Thank you so much. Finally, thank you to Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com for some of the music transitions in The Overwhelmed Brain. Well, I talked some more in this episode, and we are going to end the show right now with no more talking because there's so much more to talk about all the time. Yet here I am, continuing to talk even more, bringing the show's duration even longer than before. How much farther can it go? Well, it goes as far as it needs to go sometimes. And, some people ask, do you make money from the show? I mean, that's a great question. Let's be real for a second. Do I make money from The Overwhelmed Brain? Creating the podcast is something I don't make money with. Every now and then, you'll hear a sponsor. Like, Get Out of the Mess is a sponsor. The TOB Patron Program I treat as kind of a sponsor. I talk about that as if it were a sponsored ad on the show. And sometimes you'll hear companies like Audible. They sponsored an episode, and they may or may not be back. And now I've heard from other sponsors that want to, put their name in the show. And what does that mean? That means they give us some money for appearing in the show because we have a large audience. You are part of a large worldwide audience. So companies want to put their brand and their reputation on this show to get exposure. So they hope that you will go to their website and purchase what they are offering. And before I started The Overwhelmed Brain, I was one of those people that didn't like commercials. And so I was thinking, God, in order to make money with the show, because I have to sustain what has become this beast of The Overwhelmed Brain, in order to sustain that, I have to find ways to bring in an income. And podcasting is free. There are ways to what they call monetize it, where people can pay for episodes, which I've done with the private episodes and the TOB Patron Program. But at the same time, I wanted everyone to be able to afford it. I figured $3 a month, that's affordable. I mean, anyone can afford that, but maybe not. Maybe you're not in that position, but I still wanted to make it accessible. But the show itself, the Overwhelmed Brain show, it's like one of those free magazines that you pick up on your way out of a restaurant or something. Except I hope it's a lot more helpful. But it's true. I do the show for free, and every now and then I will get a sponsor to provide money to be on the show. And that's certainly welcome. And of course, I'll only bring in sponsors that I believe in and that I use myself. So I definitely want to expose you to products and services that I appreciate, that I use, and I know that will be of benefit to you. I started this show in November of 2013, and I really do it because there are still people out there that have challenges. There are still people out there that no matter how many episodes I put out, they're still not going to hear the right thing. And they still need that one maybe insight I have or golden nugget that I can come up with that will help them out of their situation. And there are also people that listen week after week that may not have all the challenges that other people have, but really like my ideas or my insights or perspective and have this thought of, what would Paul say? What would Paul do? And, it took me a while to get comfortable with that. I mean, if you listen to my early episodes, you'll hear where I was. Even one episode where I talk about growing into any type of authority position in what I teach. That was a challenge. And a friend of mine had to tell me that, look, you're already this person that you're coming on the air to be. You already have some skills, solutions, experience, and wisdom that other people need. So don't hide it. Come on the air and start your show and just be that person. Just embrace that person that other people are already seeing you as. And I thought that was really good advice. So I started this show for free, and I still put it out there for free because I know there are people out there that need what I talk about here. And because of that, I want to continue coming back week after week and just giving it my all and giving you what I know. And you've been giving back. You've been using the Amazon link, and you've been joining the TOB Patron program, which is definitely helping too. So these little ways that you give back allow the show to continue. So I appreciate you for doing what you do for this show. I come out here and I give it my all, and it's so nice to know that you are there, not only receiving it, but even giving back. And I appreciate that. It really feels good to me. It feels like that reciprocal relationship that I talked about earlier. It feels good. So thank you. Thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate you and your support. So let's close the show as I always do. I want you to open your mind. Go ahead and do it. Because when you do, you step into your power. And that causes you to be firm in your decisions and actions. You know, assertive. That helps you create the life you want. Always take steps to grow and evolve. You are powerful beyond measure. And above all, and this is something I absolutely know to be true about you, you are amazing.